very first episode of the Batman TV show, Batman goes to stop the Riddler in a burglary. He's actually not stealing anything. Instead, what he's trying to do is set up an opportunity to sue Batman in court. That episode plays, people love it. It's called Camp. Nobody called Dirty Harry Camp, right?
Yeah.
Talking about the very same subject matter. If I'm interested in something, I can't help but talk about it.
I wouldn't know anything about that. Hello and welcome to UNA Talks. I'm your host, Lee Taylor. This episode and every episode, we sit down with faculty members here at the University of North Alabama and discuss the research topics, the classroom discussions that they're having every day, and dive deep into these subjects, talk about what's going on in the world around us, and how we can contextualize it through their expertise. So whether you're tuning in on your way to work, going for a jog, whatever that is, we're really glad that you joined us today, so thanks for doing that. Today, I'm joined by Blake Ball. Blake is an expert in 20th century American political, social, and cultural history, and he's also an associate professor of history here at UNA. Blake is also, full discretion, a really good friend of mine, and I've known Blake for a long time, so I'm very, very excited to talk to him today. This is basically the kinds of conversations Blake and I have all the time where I do a lot of listening and Blake talks a lot and I learn a lot. So I'm really excited. Blake's book, Charlie Brown's America, The Popular Politics of Peanuts, was released through Oxford University Press in May of 2021, and it has been really successful. It's been really cool to see how the world has reacted to that. And so I've been really proud of him. It's been really cool. And he's working on a new book, but I won't spoil that. I'll let you talk about that a little bit. So I'm really excited to get into that too. But Blake, thanks for being here, man.
Lee, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit about your background. You were a student here at UNA, just kind of how you kind of came into what you're studying, how you found yourself back here. I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, I grew up in the Shoals. I never expected to go to UNA. I ended up in a UNA classroom through the Early Scholar Program my senior year of high school. And it was, at that time, high school students actually sat in the class with the college students, the real-life professors, and it was a complete game changer for me as far as how I saw UNA. It was the first time that I saw UNA not just as that little school right in my backyard, but as a serious place for thought and study and academics. And so I did end up deciding to come here. I was a music education student originally. That's where you and I met, was over in the music department. And it was while I was doing education observations, I ran out of time or it wasn't working with my schedule to go to the band room or to the choir room every day. And so I was like, well, I'll go to some other classes that I liked when I was in high school. How about social studies class? And it was during some of those visits that I started realizing, oh, wait a second. I think I would like to teach history. And so I switched over to history. I finished a history degree here at UNA, and then I went to the University of Alabama and did
it says here you betrayed the university, your alma mater, and went to one of our largest competitors. That was just the notes that I had. It's weird that you said that. Yeah,
that's the official way to put it. Yeah. That's what it says on my transcript.
Betray.
So I went and did a doctorate at Alabama, and ended up studying peanuts, which was not what I expected to be studying. But basically, I was looking for both a story that was a national story. I was interested in kind of national narratives and how we as a nation form identity. And I was also interested in just like really unusual sources for history.
Right.
You know, like not a government document, not a politician's speech, but like stuff that everyday people came into contact with on a daily basis.
And this was your this was your choice for your dissertation. To be
Yes.
clear.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's where I started with my dissertation, and so then from there I got hired at Huntingdon College in Montgomery, Alabama, and I was there for 7 years. I absolutely loved it. In another universe, I might still be there. It was just such a great place and a lot of great people. But then I started hearing that UNA had some opportunities, and I had told my wife for years if there was anywhere I would leave Huntingdon for, it was to go back home to UNA. And so when that...
You told me the same thing.
Yes.
And I was like, maybe one day that would be awesome. So,
Right. Yeah.
Obviously that worked out at some point.
Yeah.
I'll let you tell that part.
Yeah. So that I've been back here at UNA for a year, and it has been as great as I had hoped, and even better. It is just so special to get to go into the classroom and meet young people who were at a very similar place that I was at when I was their age,
and coming from the same
Yeah.
local students, or at least from regionally nearby.
Right,
A lot of them.
and to be able to kind of do for them what the incredible professors that I had did for me, and so it's just been an absolute joy, a dream. Like anywhere else doing this, I would take it just as seriously, but there would always be some element of it that was my job.
Mm-hmm.
Getting to do it here just feels like such a privilege.
Yeah.
It's been great.
What I think is really unique about your field of study, and what I find fascinating, is from the beginning of your professional career, your dissertation was on popular culture and sort of how popular culture interprets political culture and like what's happening in the world at large. Mm-hmm. And for somebody like me who's not an expert and who doesn't study this kind of stuff, what a great entry point for someone to say, here's the thing that you do understand. Now I'm going to show you really what the context of that is, and like how it was playing out in the world around it, but also how it influenced the world around it and shaped the culture. Yeah. So for me, that's so accessible and enjoyable, and you know what you're doing, because like a lot of people identify with that, and that's why I think your book has been successful, is because it really does take these academic concepts and literally attaches it to something that, I mean, not a soul in our culture doesn't know what Peanuts is or what Peanuts Comics is. It's incredibly popular. So it's just so cool to be able to see, that thing that I connect with and that I know about is actually, there's a lot of really deep thought and consideration that goes into that. I also love the part of the book, just, the history of Schultz and just like how he kind of came about and how he was influenced. Is so helpful. All of that is history, right? Mm-hmm. All of history is just sort of, all of those contexts coming together is so helpful to really help people walk through those time periods in mediums that they can digest and understand, better than they realize they can.
So one of the things that was so important to me as I was working on developing the Charlie Brown Project as an idea was being accessible. There was a lot of conversation that historians had in my academic study that was super interesting to me as a historian. But as I would go home, and as you know about me, if I'm interested in something, I can't help but talk about it. And so I
wouldn't know anything about that.
Right.
Yeah.
So as I would talk about the things I was learning in graduate school with family members, with people in my community and things like that, I was very interested in kind of 20th century American history. And so in those cases, a lot of the people a lot of the events that I was studying about many of those people were still alive who had either been involved or had been aware. And so I was constantly getting into conversations with older folks, asking them, hey, what was this like? What was that like? And their versions of what they remembered being important oftentimes didn't jive with perfectly with our historical narratives.
Their context was just different.
And so conversations like that really got me to thinking about how, the typical historian response might be something like, well, these folks just weren't aware enough of things that were going on. This was at a higher level than where they were operating and things like that. And to some degree, I totally get that. That is what's happening, right? Like there are a whole lot of our students are exactly like this. When they come into the classroom, they may not be immediately aware or deeply concerned about what's currently going on in Ukraine, or the tensions between China and Taiwan, or what have you.
We're talking about often 18-year-old students, right? I mean, just like their world is just really starting to blow up, in that way where those things matter or influence their daily lives. I mean, it's to be expected.
Yeah. So in being accessible, you have to that degree, you've got to understand that there is a disconnect in the information here, but it's not a disconnect in terms of these folks are incapable of in fact, they're just as capable and perceptive as any scholar that's sitting here. Sometimes our most important perceptions are intuitive, right? We're picking them up. We don't even realize we're picking them up. And so what I found in pop culture was an opportunity, a place where we were having this kind of art, humor, shorthand conversations back and forth between creators and audience that in some cases we didn't even realize we're having. We know it the moment we see it. And it was happening in a time in which people were responding to this through letters to their newspaper editor or letters directly to Charles Schulz, the artist, or to the production company, CBS, that are broadcasting the Peanuts specials or what have you. And so people were talking about how this made them feel. And we sometimes in academia have a tendency to go, well, let's not talk about what you feel, let's talk about what you think, which is really important. But also, I think a lot of times we feel, as human beings, we feel the truth before we've fully thought out the truth.
Right, yeah.
And so...
we can at least articulate... We can articulate our thoughts, but our feelings may be the harder thing to articulate.
Sure.
So we don't talk about them as much. We can intellectualize our thoughts. It's much, much more difficult to intellectualize, how something affects us or makes us feel. You end up with a lot more material.
Yeah. Well, and so what you have is human beings intuiting experiences, which is, from my perspective, is historical data. Right? What was it? What was it like as a human being to go through? Just like it's almost like the classic '90s movie. And so, to your question about accessibility, this is how it ends up happening because all my references are pop culture.
Right.
And the Twister movie with the original one with
Bill Paxton.
Yeah, Bill Paxton
and Helen Hunt
and
Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yes, so many
and a few others that are not coming to mind.
Yeah. One of the key premises is they've got this super sensitive computer equipment, and they want to get it right into the heart of a tornado, right? Get the tornado, suck this thing up so that we can learn about what it's like inside a tornado.
Right.
For historians, human experience, human feelings through the major events of that's kind of like putting the equipment right in the tornado, right? And as historians, a lot of times I think we throw that away. We go, oh well, that's just how somebody felt, or that's just that was just whatever. They don't have data, they don't have stats, they don't have statistics, whatever. But data and stats and statistics are just quantifying what people actually experienced. Right, and I think we've seen it in our own time, like some of the examples with recent conversations in the last few years about inflation and changes in inflation, and how regular people were picking up on what was happening weeks and months in advance of the scholarship or public leaders getting to a point of going, oh wow, okay, yeah, so like our narrative about what was happening with inflation was not incorrect, but it was missing some nuances underneath that people were picking up on. They didn't know exactly what the problem was. They didn't exactly know how to express it, right? The easiest way they had to express it was at the ballot box.
Right,
but they weren't wrong. They weren't wrong in picking up on something. It's like the birds before a storm.
There was fear. There was a cultural wave of uncertainty. And they didn't maybe know why. But
and so what I set out to do with Charlie Brown was to say, hey, here's something being produced in real time. In many cases, this
is a catalog,
this is,
right? Daily,
right? With sometimes just a few week lead time on events, right? And in need of daily generation of information. So of course it's going to incorporate the things that are something I saw in the news sparks an idea that I then talk about with Charlie Brown and Linus or what have you. And using that as a chronicle, as a sort of readout of, and then the audience responses to that as a sort of real-time readout of what was it like to live through this, and to talk about it in a space where people didn't feel like they were standing at a podium and being chronicled. Right? When a politician stands at a podium and answers, gives a press release or answers stump questions, that's all pre-rehearsed, right? It's all, and they may in the moment, they may break and they may, drop, say something they shouldn't have or in a way that doesn't work great or whatever. But when you're writing a personal letter to your favorite artist and you want to tell him what you loved about the character or about how he got the character completely wrong in that instance, you're not thinking about how the wider world will think about what you have to say. It's just a conversation between two people. But because one of the people in this equation is a really important person, and because he also happened to be a bit of a pack rat and hold on to a lot of things.
Yeah, you talk about that a lot in your book about how that's what a gift for someone doing research, right? I mean, he literally, not only do you have this chronicle of his publications, but you also have a lot of these chronicles of his daily life and his interaction with his fans and things like that.
Right. Yeah. So I guess all of that is to why I wanted to study this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think it really works and is important in the classroom or to a reader, is because these are things that we're all very familiar with, but maybe I'm one of on the fewer side of the weirdos who thinks about it more deeply and goes and asks the question of what are we revealing about ourselves in these spaces where we're just here for entertainment, we're just here to relax.
Right.
And in that space, when we kind of let our hair down, we're sharing some information about who we are, what we think's funny, what we think is ironic about our world, what we criticize, what we are afraid of, what we're hoping for, what we hope our children's world will be like, all these things. And so all of that is sort of, and it's packed into this medium that is extremely visual, right?
Talking about accessibility or whatever, it's through the context of children.
Yeah.
I mean, it has to be simplified to an extent. And the irony is a lot of the times that, they're saying things that grown-ups would say, but they're not getting it quite right. That's what's so great about that, right? Is like they're kind of misunderstanding what's going on, and that's their interpretation of it, but the viewer knows just enough to know, oh, that's funny that Lucy doesn't really get that. So yeah, it's very symbiotic in like its effectiveness, because not only is it interpreting the world for the common person, but it's also not saying, it's not belittling them for maybe not having a full context, but connecting with them with how they might feel.
Yeah.
So Schultz was empathetic to that, and I think that your pedagogical style is also very, I don't know which one came first, like how much you picked up on that from him, but I think that you're just somebody, because you connect with pop culture and because you're an artistic person, a musician, and a thinker about these kind of things, I think you just naturally sort of know that you have to bridge that gap because that's what somebody did for you.
Yeah, absolutely. That really is a core part of my pedagogy and my approach to a class. In order to be able to teach a class to the best of my ability, I really need to get to know the people that I'm teaching, and I need to hear from them what they know, what they think, and what they feel. And in that conversation, we can begin to start expanding where they need to expand, to sharpen where they need some sharpening. And so I find pop culture is a great place to meet at and start much deeper conversations.
Right.
It would be super easy, and there's so much pop culture production that does this, is part of what makes Peanuts kind of a standout example. There's so much pop culture that is fine to operate just at the surface level.
Yeah.
Right. And so it would, in the same way, it would be really easy to let those conversations just be me walk away with some self-gratification that, okay, the millennial professor can still connect with the kids, right? Because we know the same reference point
through all the TikToks.
Through the TikToks.
Right.
But to then probe those conversations and go deeper with why are we connecting with this? What does this mean? What does this actually reveal about us, or what context made this thing?
Yeah.
Right? There's a world, there's a different context in which this wouldn't make any sense at all. So how did the world that lived through that generate this art?
Thanks so much for joining us today. I really hope you're enjoying the interview. I wanted to take a second and just thank the University of North Alabama, who is the sponsor of this podcast. This episode and every episode, we're talking to faculty members, having really interesting conversations. I hope you're enjoying it. If you are, please hit the subscribe button. Please share this with your friends. We really want to just more deeply engage with our community as a whole. If you want to learn more about our programs and learn more about all the amazing things that happen at UNA every day, whether it's on campus or online, visit una.edu. We have a lot of great stories of our student success on our blog. You can learn more about our faculty members and, of course, our wonderful academic programs. So please take a second, check out una.edu. Follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube, and X, formerly known as Twitter. So please join us on those platforms. And now we will get back to our interview with Dr. Blake Ball.
One of the things, for example, and a lot of the Charles Schultz was a World War II veteran. When Vietnam came along, he was very adamant. Him and another number of other World War II veterans, like Bill Malden, who was another famous political cartoonist, were adamant that, hey, everybody's been really critical of these guys, these young men during the Vietnam War that are anxious and fearful about being drafted. It's like, we're all forgetting, because we're this side of our service, we're all forgetting we felt exactly the same way. When the draft came for us, Charles Schultz never expected to be a soldier. That was nowhere in his life trajectory plan. Right? He'd never held a gun before. And he was terrified going into the war. He said it was the loneliest 3 years of my life, but also it was completely life-changing in good ways and in negative ways. It played on all sorts of anxieties, but it also gave him all sorts of confidence and resilience in his life and in his career. And one of the interesting things that so many of those artists out of World War II talk about was how important humor was for them. Because humor was a way of, sometimes they felt like it was a situation where if I don't laugh, I might cry, right? And so it was a way, humor was a way not of necessarily avoiding the feelings of things, but a way of processing the feeling of those experiences.
As is really any art form, but
Yeah.
comedy kind of has a special place in that journey for a lot of people.
Yeah. And so these are all elements of how I think using pop culture to help access the humanity of history and also the humanity in the classroom, right? To remind us that, yes, we are doing an academic pursuit, but also we're people.
Yeah.
We're people engaging with the larger story of people, of human experience.
Yeah.
And by doing that, we can begin to learn the skills we need to engage with a world wider than just myself in 2025.
Yeah, and pop culture in general, I mean, everything from Bruce Springsteen to Banksy, it is this outlet for, really expressing and connecting with people over what is often political frustrations or frustrations with the world at large or the powers that be. Peanuts was so popular, like unbelievably popular. Like we'll probably never see anything like that again because media is so compartmentalized now and targeted.
Everyone read the newspaper
for
something or the other.
Yeah.
And about half, by 1970, about half of all American...
Half.
That's 50% of all Americans started every morning with Peanuts.
Right. Yeah, and the only other examples of that, probably even around that same time, would be like I Love Lucy, because there's only 3 channels. When did comics really become that for, what we're looking at today? And when would you say that they started to really shape the culture around them like that?
Yeah, so comic strips are kind of the grandfather of comic books. And once comic books come along, comic strips continue to exist, obviously. Comic strips still in some print version and a lot on digital, online, still exist. Once comic books come along, they kind of end up taking their own trajectory. And so these really develop into 2 very different art forms.
Yeah.
And with a common lineage. Comic strips were really important in the big explosion of newspaper printing at the turn of the 20th century, 1890s into the 20th century. It was a very urban medium to begin with. Cities like New York and San Francisco were at the forefront. And these were extremely diverse populations. There was a lot of different languages being spoken in households in a place like New York City in the 1890s and 1900. A city like San Francisco, the statistics might be as much as half of the population had at least one foreign-born parent. Right, so so it's a very diverse population. There are going to be a lot of foreign language newspapers in these spaces, but one of the spaces that begins to sort of bridge the gap for a lot of this diversity is comic strips and cartoons, because you can say a whole lot in those illustrations without the need for words. Right? In a lot of cases, the words are sort of giving context to interpret the pictures. But you can interpret the pictures even if you can't read the words. And so because of its visual communication, it becomes very powerful and very popular. So by the mid 20th century, you have really an explosion of newspapers. They're going to hit their height by the 60s into the early 70s. You see kind of the height of newspaper circulation, and comic strips are riding with that. So Peanuts really can't happen the way that it does on the scale that it does had it not been for that particular media moment.
Right.
So many times I get the question of, could there be a Peanuts today? Could there, there, and really there couldn't, not in that way, right? You just didn't have the same sort of vehicle that had so widespread attention.
Yeah.
So comic books are really going to be, in a lot of ways, for a long time, much more of a niche product. They are viewed as largely for children. They start off as combining reprints of newspaper comic strips. We'll just get Peanuts did this. In fact, they had a publishing deal starting as early as 52, 53, where we'll just take this one-off Monday morning comic strip that we sell. We'll put it in combination in these kind of serial stories, and we'll resell it in a dime book for people. So that's where comic books get their start. It was really expensive a lot of times, especially for new publishers to get into the licensing game of buying, and so it became a whole lot cheaper to just generate your own content. A lot of it
sounds a lot like the digital revolution, right? I mean, it's really similar.
Yeah, absolutely. And so so that's where you're going to get characters by the late 30s, characters like Superman and Batman, who are Superman originally was a character that two high schoolers had come up with in Cleveland, Ohio, and these two high schoolers for about 5 years try and sell it to anybody they can get their hands on, and nobody will take it. And so it ends up at a book called Action Comics.
The famous cover with him holding the green Volkswagen.
It ends up there because nobody else would take it, right? And so here was a medium that was desperate for content and willing to take chances on content that was non-conventional and wouldn't really work in other mediums, right? A newspaper comic strip, you don't have, for example, that first Superman story is, as I recall, it's about 14 pages long. 14 pages full of comic strip art.
Yeah,
that would take a whole year to develop in a weekly comic strip, right in the newspaper.
Right.
You could throw this all out there at once, and so kids pick up on it. And they start reading this stuff, and a lot like we're dealing with the AI innovations at the moment. Kids are picking up on this faster than the adults are. The adults have this tension of everything that we've known before.
They have sort of this
this
literacy out the gate with it, because they've interacted with technology since they were babies. So right. And so and there's a lot that they have to learn. Obviously, they're young, and they need to learn how to critically think and all of these sorts of things. But there's a lot that they, in the next couple of decades, are going to teach us about what all this new technology is capable of. When cycle
smart
will
human
continue.
beings,
The same thing that we've experienced.
And so there is this kind of development of comics in the realm of youth culture,
right?
All throughout the middle period. And I would say that the moment really where comic books starts to show its first flashes of its cultural significance come in 1966 with the Batman TV show. The Batman TV show, which is done as this, it always gets called camp. But I think I think many times when, and this is part of what I'm doing in my next book, which is a cultural biography of Batman in
Here
the
it
20th
is.
century.
I was about to tee you up for it.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. Batman is obviously incredibly influential, but I think means a lot to individuals. And I think has done pretty well since 1966.
Yeah. He's doing all right.
I think I think that
right.
IP has settled nicely.
Yeah.
I'm whenever you told me you were working on a book about Batman, I was thrilled. I was like, this is amazing to have a friend who's working on something like that. So super cool.
Well, so one of the things that gets missed in that camp label, or that juvenile label,
in the we're talking mid 60s when the TV show rolls out.
Yeah. Yep. In cultural studies, there's all these conversations about like high art and low art.
Yeah.
You see it in like religion, like high church, low church, all these kind of things. And in these classifications is really kind of class attitudes about what is worthwhile and what's not worthwhile, right? And adults of every generation have a real tendency to be dismissive about the cultural productions of that interest young people. That's another part of what drove me to study all of this stuff, because I was a good student in school when I applied myself. Sometimes I was more applying myself to beating the latest PlayStation game, or watching Batman the Animated Series on the afternoon TV, or whatever. But when I applied myself to class, I was a good kid, but a good student, and academically curious, and could be rigorous and read books and all those things. I also loved pop culture, and I felt like a lot of the conversation from adults was about, man, like these kids these days, how much better off they would be if they spent less of time applying themselves to this and more time applying themselves to the serious stuff. And I always felt like, I think the adults are missing that there's serious stuff here. There is serious stuff here,
right? And whenever you say that specifically, because of that, they were adapting something that was, looking back at the comics, was really complex, and like the character development and things like that, and it was reflective of the time, which I know you're going to be writing about. Yep. They were adapting that for a medium that wasn't really being taken seriously either, which was it was being taken seriously from from the context of the news and things like that, but storytelling on television was, very lighthearted for the most part. It would get darker in the 70s and things like that, but most of it was comedy. It was meant to, come home from work and sit down on the couch and take your mind off of things for a minute. And they didn't want to be talking about deep, dark, political themes. They wanted to make you laugh, and so Batman became a bit of a joke. Sure. In the television show, or at least this kind of larger-than-life exaggeration of all these things. And you have all these amazing performances looking back at it, because they really just owned that and made it its own thing. And then what a juxtaposition that we experience now. I mean, like, you can't get darker and grittier in film and TV than with the same intellectual property. So it clearly transcends all of these things. But they eventually, our generation, seemed to understand what you understood whenever you were young, which is they're talking about really deep, dark stuff, and this is a vehicle for helping people understand grief and anger and all, and even in power struggles and stuff like that. Like we really explored that as comic book readers as kids, and now you see it reflected in the films and TV shows that they're making about Batman today. So it's really cool.
Two great examples, I think, that illustrate this very point in the Batman TV show, which ran for 3 seasons, and a summertime theatrical release, the famous Batman movie with the bat shark spray,
the unbelievable, the bat ladder. I'll never forget the bat ladder. Yes. Me and my friends would watch that movie all the time and just laugh so hard because it's
funny.
So great,
so funny. So the very first episode of the Batman TV show sets up on a premise that Batman goes to stop the Riddler in a burglary. But the Riddler has staged the whole thing. He's actually not stealing anything. Instead, what he's trying to do is set up an opportunity to sue Batman in court. And it's played very comically. Batman runs into all of the kind of legal restraints upon being a mass vigilante trying to help police a violent, corrupt city in Gotham, right? That episode plays. People love it. It's called camp in among social critics in all the papers. They love it. They treat it as comedy, not to be treated very seriously.
Right.
1968, a movie comes out with an actor who got his start in TV westerns and spaghetti westerns. A guy named maybe you've heard of him, Clint Eastwood.
Yeah, sounds familiar.
Comes out with a movie called Dirty Harry. Mm-hmm. And there are all these conversations in Dirty Harry about what should the limitations be on the police power.
Yeah.
And there's that famous scene where Clint Eastwood's character kind of catches up to the sniper who's been killing people around the city, catches up to him at a football field, and he beats him up. Mm-hmm. And the police department ends up letting the guy out because of this. They're afraid of a lawsuit, and he's getting chewed out by his police chief. Yeah. And Dirty Harry's response is, "Well, Chief, I'm all broken up about that guy's rights."
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Talking about the greater consequence to society and this tension, right. In policing. Nobody called Dirty Harry camp. Right?
Yeah.
Talking about the very same subject matter.
Right. Yeah.
Another example, the Batman movie. There's that great, really hilarious scene of Batman running around on the docks with the giant bomb over his head. Right? And he goes to try and throw
every
it.
part of the dock is covered with something
Here comes the marching band. Here comes the lady with the baby carriage. There's the baby ducks in the water. Here's the nuns over here. And then the famous line, "Some days you just can't get rid of a bomb."
Yeah. Yeah.
Just a couple of years earlier,
and the bomb couldn't have looked more like something from Looney Tunes.
Yes, it's absolutely comedic. It's straight out of a comic book.
Yeah,
right.
It's great, yeah.
It's absurd and it's ludicrous.
Yeah.
There was also a really absurd and ludicrous portrayal of trying to deal with the bomb, just a couple of years earlier when a young film director by the name of Stanley Kubrick finishes his satirical, comedic movie about the bomb with the Warhawk general literally riding the bomb like it's a bucking bronco all the way into its detonation site, right, to get rid of that bomb. This is Dr. Strangelove, right? Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Nobody called that camp, right? Nobody said that was camp.
And so,
Mm-hmm. So I'm making the argument that what got dismissed at the time as silliness, right, as just juvenile kiddie stuff, was actually doing some pretty shrewd satirical work within its comedy, dealing with some very serious issues, and using the levity of and the colorfulness of the comic book world as a vehicle to have these conversations.
Right.
Right there on network television.
Yeah.
And it's only because of the medium that it was coming out of that it got looked down upon and diminished and dismissed as camp, not to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
But it was really the first step in comic books sort of stepping into the world of mass culture and saying we have something to say about the world.
Yeah.
And of course you're exactly right. Comic books have taken off, you
jump to 30, 40 years from then. Today we're still showing and helping people digest and depict or challenge their own thoughts around what should our power dynamics look like in a free society.
Yep.
And we're using people who, with superpowers to tell that story because it separates us from the context enough where we can just be like, yeah, this isn't real, but it enters the back door of our mind well enough to help us think through those things or navigate them or at least explore them or discover our own insights. Because we need sort of a world that's like ours but not like ours to help us do that. And then we use entertainment as sort of the gateway. So any art worth its salt, even if you don't classify, I would say there's a lot of people that would still not classify. Martin Scorsese famously said that that Marvel films are not art, or they're not cinema.
Yeah.
They're just
it's an amusement park ride.
Yeah, it's an amusement park ride on a screen.
Yeah.
And that's his take on it, right? But I would argue that, well, maybe that's just another version. Maybe we're still there where we see these mediums as low art.
Sure.
We see them as these things, but there's room for a conversation where, no, we're making larger concepts accessible for people who need the opportunity to process how they feel about the world around them or navigate the environments that they're in. So I find that really interesting that we're still having a lot of those conversations.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks so much for joining us today. I really hope you're enjoying the interview. I wanted to take a second and just thank the University of North Alabama, who is the sponsor of this podcast. This episode and every episode, we're talking to faculty members, having really interesting conversations. I hope you're enjoying it. If you are, please hit the subscribe button. Please share this with your friends. We really want to just more deeply engage with our community as a whole. If you want to learn more about our programs and learn more about all of the amazing things that happen at UNA every day, whether it's on campus or online, visit una.edu. We have a lot of great stories of our student success on our blog. You can learn more about our faculty members and, of course, our wonderful academic programs. So please take a second, check out una.edu. Follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube, and X, formerly known as Twitter. So please join us on those platforms. And now we will get back to our interview with Dr. Blake Ball.
As you know, I've got 3 daughters. Mm-hmm. And when we had our first daughter, my wife wanted to do this thing where we would teach sign language to our daughter Malia to communicate some things like she was hungry, she's finished, I want more, I'm thirsty, just different thank you, please, different things. And I thought, quite honestly, this is ridiculous. Why would we teach a sub 1-year-old baby sign language? Do they?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
As I watch this, and I know other people experience this as well. As you watch this, actually, the fact that you start to realize that when the baby is crying, many times, the baby's crying because they don't have any other mode to express what the problem is, right? When you give them tools to begin expressing, all of a sudden, you start realizing, oh my gosh, there's a whole lot more going on back there than I realized, right? And I think that there's a whole lot of that happens in our conversations about pop culture, that we're looking at this and we're going, that is so brainless, that is so dumb. Why do so many people like that? The classic one for me when I got to grad school was American Idol was the biggest thing on television in the 2000s, by the late 2000s. It was huge. But
you had to call in and vote for your person, and everyone would be talking about it the next day.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And there were so many people in academia, so many conversations I ran into talking about what an indictment of American life that this stupid show is the thing that we're so interested in, that we're so in conversation about.
You'll vote for Kelly Clarkson, but you won't vote for the next political candidate or whatever. Right.
I saw it completely differently than that. Right. I saw it as an American public that was deeply frustrated by how the election in 2000 had gone.
Yeah.
To have a panel of 9 people that got appointed once upon a time to tell us who the president was going to be.
Yeah.
Hold on a second. I thought this was a democracy where we got to tell y'all who the president was.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Wow.
And so there was this nascent pin-up feeling in America of we want some control over this. This is supposed to be democracy. Our voice is supposed to matter, and we feel like it does not, right? And so we express that in our art. We express that in our entertainment, in our leisure, and so I think that's still going on. Right, and that what is often getting dismissed as thoughtless or brainless, like it is thoughtful and has meaning. Why? Because a human being made it. Right, and so ultimately, I think sometimes it's more about. I don't think that this group of this subset, this corner of American culture, or this corner of American life. Has any useful thoughts, and so I dismiss their thoughts. Pop culture is a great venue for airing those frustrations, those concerns, where they won't be taken seriously elsewhere.
Right, it's that common ground.
Yeah,
it's the common ground. There's a lot of Democrats who love Star Wars. There's a lot of Republicans who love Star Wars. They all have their own take on it. They all see themselves in these. It's a place where we can all get together and then regroup later if we want to.
We are a storytelling, story-loving species.
Yep.
We make sense of our world through stories. We live and express ourselves so much more through stories than we even like to give ourselves credit for. And a lot of it's subconscious, right? We're making stories about you and I started this podcast with a story, right? There's so many elements of my story that got left out there, right? And that if you included those might lead to a different understanding of this, right? But I put them together in a particular group in a particular order to make sense of why I'm here.
How does a symbiotic relationship between what we consume, how we understand the world, and what's actually happening in the world, how does that change? How are we going to discover that in the future? What will history say about that 20 and 30 years from now, in your opinion?
What's that great quote? History doesn't repeat, but it does rhyme. Right, and so we get hints as new stories unfold in our real world. We get hints of I feel like elements of this feel familiar, right?
Yeah,
and part of that has to do with the fact that from my viewpoint, human nature is a thing that persists throughout humanity. Human nature, both the good and the bad of it, is something that persists. What changes is personalities and circumstances and the kind of wider web of events that are in the driver's seat, right? Different personalities in different places answer the question differently, right? Which leads to a different set of world events. So history is really good at helping us to make sense of even our present as we live through it, as we kind of get the details and start going, oh, okay, I can see what's happening now, and here's what led to that, right? That in some ways the present is revealing to us what was actually important in our past, right? In ways that everybody has this experience individually, something that you were involved in at the time that you thought, oh my gosh, this is so ridiculous. Why am I having to do this? And then you get down the road and you go, oh, you know what? That came in handy, right? It's like Slumdog Millionaire. The whole premise of that movie, right?
How his negative experiences in his case led him to having all the right answers and when the moment came.
Yeah. And it's not as though he literally went through those experiences just so he would know the answers later on.
Yeah.
But the significance of those experiences in his larger life only become
Right.
clear when he gets down the road. And,
Right.
right.
Yeah.
And so we're very used to that. Right. What I can say about where I think we're headed in the future, number one is that it is going to be, wherever we go in pop culture and political culture, which is my way of saying like the shorthand for how we express our social and political order.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So that, a perfect intersection there is like Charlie Brown trying to kick the football. How many times does that come up? I included in the book, for example, it came out in 21. I included a newspaper political cartoon of Charlie Brown trying to kick the football, and in this case, Lucy holding the football with a big smile on her face. Lucy's head, instead of being Lucy's head, it's shaped like the coronavirus, right? COVID-19.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the football is labeled reopening society, right? And so it's the spring, and Charlie Brown is anxious, looking at, should I try this, right?
Yeah.
And we were still at that point early on where we'd just gone through 2020,
Yeah.
and now we're trying to figure out, is it safe to start trying to go back to normal life? Because clearly we were dealing with the fact that we can't stay in lockdown forever. But how do we do this,
Yeah.
right? And the way to express, there's no thought bubble, there's no subtext, anything like this. It's just this simple image of Charlie Brown debating whether he should trust Lucy and try and kick the football. We read this and knew immediately what they're talking about.
Right.
And like, yep, that's our dilemma, right?
Right.
And so that image from the newspaper comic strips has become a shorthand symbol in our political culture to express how we feel about the decisions we're having to make in real time. So one step of this future in political culture and pop culture is that it will be a debate. Right, it'll be an argument. It always is, and there will be many voices involved, including voices that some will look at and say, "Well, those people don't have any business being involved in this. They don't know enough. They don't have the degrees or the expertise or the qualification to be in this conversation." Right. But typically, as we find, there are many more of those folks in the conversation than there are of the people who do have the degrees.
Especially nowadays, where the conversation is available.
Yeah,
through media and social media, you can hop right in, and sometimes you can raise to the top despite what your credentials are, or what your expertise is, or if you really even know what you're talking about. Sometimes, sometimes that's good because it's accessible. Sometimes it's hurtful because it's misleading. So,
Yep. And so here's the thing for us from a kind of scholarly professional standpoint is we dismiss these conversations at our own risk, right? We dismiss and belittle and call, whatever, dumb, camp, whatever, juvenile,
low art,
whatever, these conversations at our own risk, right? What we should actually do is step into the conversation, not to police or correct the conversation necessarily, right? Again, I think parenting and dealing with a child sometimes is like a lot of times things that children do is not really nefarious. It's coming from a place of like mistaken understanding, right, or impartial knowledge, right? And so they're acting out at the new baby sister in the household, not because they actually hate this baby sister, but because they're fearful that the arrival of a new person to compete for the attention and resources of my parents is a danger to me, and so now this person is my opponent, right? And because they haven't experienced, oh, wait, mom and dad are still going to love me the same, right? They haven't lived through that experience yet to know that, Okay, so they're acting in a very rational way, right? With limited knowledge, right? With incorrect information. And so I think we as scholars have got to be mature enough and understanding enough to know, hey, I've got something to contribute to this conversation. I've also got things I can learn from this conversation, because people here are expressing things that maybe they don't fully understand, but also maybe I haven't picked up on yet because I live in a different circumstance or in a different bubble or whatever. Let me try and understand where they're coming from, and then let me talk in an understanding way to a fellow human being, right? Let's discuss. Let's develop our understanding of what the real thing, this feeling that you're having. There's some cause underneath it, right?
Yeah.
There's something percolating underneath. Let's get to that.
And until
let's work towards a solution.
Right, and until you address that or sort of disarm people a little bit, you're really not going to get to a productive conversation if there's a difference, or if there's a misunderstanding, or if there's just maybe just like some ignorance on the other end of that. So you have to be willing to take a little bit of that and disarm folks by saying, I can understand how you could feel that way, and not just try to win the intellectual argument all the time, which is something people say we've lost the ability to do that. But the one nice thing about how much of this kind of stuff there is all over the internet is I'm like, I think people are not as bad at it. It's just those views aren't really rising to the top because we're attracted to watching people argue, I guess. But there's a lot of kind of sleepier content out there of people just kind of like, I don't know, that's a good point. Like, it doesn't raise as many eyebrows, but I do feel like that's an art that has not been lost by any means. We may not be as good at it as we want to be, but going into classrooms and hearing and learning from those perspectives and teaching students how to do that is how we're going to get there. So I think that's a full circle thought for me, working at a university, working around people like you who are actually doing that work every day, is you're showing students how to argue and how to debate and how to have conversations that are productive. And I think you're really embodying kind of what the academic community can learn from that experience, because so often, we do find that conflict there, and we do find that's a real challenge. So I think it's really important to have these sort of mediums, whether it's pop culture or whatever, that we can all agree on. And what we can all agree on is that we get upset sometimes about things, or we take things personally. Like, who doesn't? That's our sign language. That's our Star Wars, our comic book, whatever that is like, well, let's just go ahead and acknowledge that both of us, are prone to this kind of stuff. And so let's approach that as at this on the common ground, and then see where we end up. And that can be a hard thing to do.
Yeah. Well, history is, and pop culture as well, right? Is pretty ruthless when it comes to testing out ideas. And deciding what works and what doesn't.
We'll see which one survives. Whatever idea survives. It's pretty ruthless.
And so it can be a little uncomfortable, but I think the right thing to do is to lean into humanity, lean into conversation and looking for understanding.
Well, I disagree with that, but that's okay. Cool. No, that's awesome, man. Thanks so much, Blake, for your time. And if you've enjoyed this, please subscribe. Share this with our community and with your friends, with other professors, with whatever. We love to just really at UNA love to show the success stories of our students. We love to brag about our students. We love to show our brilliant faculty and the thoughtful people we have here on campus shaping our culture every day. So if you want to learn more about UNA and our programs, all the things that we do here on campus and online, and learn more about the people that are making an impact in our community, just visit una.edu. You'll find out really quick. There's a lot of really great resources there. And Blake, thanks so much, man. This has been super fun. This is like a dream come true to just get to sit and talk, and someone actually can listen back to it and hear all the great insights you have that I hear all the time. So,
well, it's always a great conversation getting to talk with you, Lee. So
thanks, dude.
Thanks for the time.
Absolutely. All right. Until next time, keep asking tough questions, find your path, and as we say here at UNA, roar lions. So, thanks a lot.